culture. That's the title. It's a punchy title. So this is the jumping off point. I was thinking over the last few weeks, like, what is our relationship to this thing, open culture? Do we want it? How do we want it? What does it mean? And I had it all figured out that there was this really clear-cut set of options that I was going to present today, and then I started thinking about them, and at about 10:30 last night they just disintegrated, and I was like, I'm looking at this problem in completely the wrong way. So I've tried to work out and explain how I came to this conclusion that I was looking at the problem in the wrong way, and some ways that I think that are more useful of looking at the problem. So, okay, wish me luck is basically what I'm saying. So, can you want culture? What is culture anyway? Right? Culture. Culture is something that happens, right? It's something that you have. It's like a personality. Right? A culture is a personality of an organization. It's not necessarily something that you pick. It's not something that you want in and of itself. Right? How attached to you are you to having your personality? How important is it to you to have the personality that you have? Alternatively, is it important to you to be an awesome person? Right? Wanting culture for its own sake is like wanting personality for its own sake. You see other people and you think, oh, this person is cool. I shall be cool as well. I will wear sunglasses because they wear sunglasses, right? But this is what teenagers do. They're like, oh, this person is awesome. So how do I become awesome? What I must do is I must copy the kind of external trappings of their awesomeness, rather than try and find my own awesomeness and express it as fully as I can. And that's how that's kind of what coolness is, right? So what we actually want is for work to be awesome. That's really the kind of approach that we have, because we're here to work and we're like, how can we do that in the most awesome way possible? So we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions. What is the work that we have on hand? What is the stuff that we're trying to do? And how do we approach it in a way that creates the greatest opportunity for awesomeness? How do we structure ourselves in a way that allows us to do the stuff that we do as a business in a way that is as awesome as possible? So maybe some other analogies thinking about the kind of way that culture is and personality is. So it's like beauty, right? Where is the beauty in an image? What is it about a sunset that is somehow appealing? It's an emergent property of the whole, right? Another way of looking at it, it's like a magnetic field. How do you change a magnetic field? You can't sort of go in and grab it or push it around. You have to change the things that cause it. Magnets, electric currents. It's like traffic. Traffic is an emergent property of roads and cars. Traffic is basically a way of saying what is happening now in the system of roads and cars. That's traffic, right? That's culture. Culture is kind of a way of saying, it's a way of understanding what is. We can change the road, we can change the vehicles, we can't change the traffic directly. We change the structures, we change the conditions, and then the stuff happens. The point being, if an awesome personality is what you get by being and doing an awesome stuff, then an awesome culture is too. Right? By being and doing awesome stuff as a business, that's how we get an awesome culture. It's not the culture that matters, it's the being awesome. It's the doing work in the most awesome possible way. So I think that the misstep that it's easy to make, actually I'm going to do these slides in the other order. Right? The misstep that it's easy to make is, like looking at the finger rather than looking at the moon. When you discover that there is a power in doing things differently, that you discover that other people are doing things in a way that's actually limiting to them, and you don't want to do things in that way, it's very easy to get drawn into the kind of fascination with the difference. To get kind of drawn into the sense of saying, oh, other people do business in this way, we've discovered this better way of doing business, and to get drawn into a sort of fascination about, I wonder what that is. And it's kind of a sideline to go down to be digging into that. And that's like the monks versus heroes. Right? Think about holacracy. Holacracy is a way of doing open culture. They call it an operating system for an organization. It's maintained by Holacracy 1. The way that it came to be is that Brian Robertson, who founded Holacracy 1, previously founded a company called Ternary Software. And he founded Ternary Software because he said, I want to run a company that's an experiment in structure. I want to run a company that's kind of a lab to work out how companies work best. And it incidentally made some software, right? That's the kind of monastic approach. We want to seek enlightenment, and if we do something in the world as a result of that, it's an awesome side effect. Right? I think a better approach for us, a more interesting, more fulfilling, more kind of down and dirty approach is like the Morningstar approach, which is to live life as a hero, to live a life of action, to go out and say, let's go and do stuff, and if as a result of that enlightenment arises, it's a delicious side effect. So, we want to be looking at the moon, which is doing work in an awesome way, rather than the finger, the kind of path that's taking us there, right? Here's a diagram. You've seen this diagram before. What is having fun in this diagram of kind of how work is awesome? For me, it's this. It's no bullshit, right? Bullshit is the stuff that gets in the way of work being awesome. What is bullshit in work? Politics. Politics is bullshit, right? It's wasting time. It is wasting time and stopping you doing work and enjoying work and getting better at what you do. Blame is bullshit. Lack of honesty, right? Shying away, like false harmony, shying away from the things that need to say, bullshit. Purposeless meetings, bullshit. Not having a clear picture of your work, bullshit. If you don't know what your work is and what state it is in, how can you possibly get better at doing it and have a more awesome time, right? Think about the anti-problem. If you had to solve the problem of how to make work less awesome, what would you do? You would fill people's time with meetings that went nowhere. You would create an organisation in which more time was spent on making sure that you can't be blamed for stuff than actually going out and doing it. You would fill your days with justification and finger pointing. You would not cooperate. Right? Think about this question: how would you make work less awesome? Anything that is an answer to that question tells you the stuff that we should be removing from our organisation. Some things that generally help work be more awesome, I believe. Right? This has been a lot of what GrantTree Fundamentals has been about. These are techniques that we can employ that will allow us to enjoy ourselves more and to do better work. Right, all of these things from the, apparently there's some complex animation on that slide that I wasn't expecting. It's copied and pasted from somewhere else. When you have good material, reuse it. Microstructures, right? Once you learn them, bring them back. All of these things in this kind of the various levels of empathy, right? These are ways in which we can make teams work more effective. We can work more effectively. That's all the stuff from the Arbiter Institute. Revisit the GrantTree fundamental stuff on that. Also this is the Patrick Lencioni, the massive book that's on that shelf called The Dysfunctions of a Team. Well, these are the kind of functions. These are the things that really well-functioning teams have. I love the fact that we interviewed someone for a job this week, and in the space of the 4 people who we were seeing, one of them was talking about working in a kind of traditional top-down hierarchical business for a boss who clearly understands all of this. And actually, understands the kind of pyramid of change as well. And essentially has created a condition for his team in which open culture is true. They work in a very non-blamey, cooperative, systems thinking kind of way. They do all of this stuff, and as a consequence, they get results. Later on, in the same interview round, another candidate had a question for us, which is, well, when people have worked in open culture, does that limit the places where they can go? And I thought, well, it's interesting because it kind of ties back to what this other person was saying, which is that actually, having worked in open culture, you can totally then go and work in hierarchical environments. But you're only going to work for really good leaders, right? Leaders who understand this stuff, leaders who understand that their function is to make this stuff happen, to create the space for the team in which trust, candor, commitment, etc. can arise and people can do awesome work. So what we really do is we give people a really good test for bad leaders and bullshit. And an unwillingness to put up with that in the future, right? The other thing, having everything that you need to do your work, right? That includes the advice process. The advice process is a mechanism by which everybody has precisely the amount of power that they need to do the things that they want to do. So, this is a slightly messy talk, but here are some things to kind of take away. Do awesome stuff. Do awesome work. Find the obstacles to awesomeness and destroy them. Any questions?
Is there a recipe for destroying dad jokes? Does that create...
Are they an obstacle to awesomeness?
Mm-hmm. Destroying bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I take it we're talking about non-violent communication here. How would you advise we go around destroying bullshit?
Okay. I wonder if that's such a broad. I mean, I don't think I can. I sort of don't think I have an answer for that question. It kind of feels so broad that,
Well,
like,
the reason I say it is, I think a lot of people know in this room what bullshit is, and everyone knows what is the treacle or the struggle that makes work laborious. But it's how you quash it, stop it, circumnavigate it, or deal with it is the more challenging problem.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that is, you know, if we want to understand what we're doing, if you think about what the jumping off point for this was, I was thinking about why do we, you know, what is open culture? Why do we want it? What do we want it? What is it? Blah blah blah. No, that's not what we're about. What we want is to be an organisation that has a commitment to having a process of ongoing improvement where we find and remove bullshit. Right? Now, each individual bit of bullshit is going to have its own removal strategy.
I like that.
Yeah?
It's true.
So
yeah.
purposeless meetings, the way that you remove bullshit there is you start to say, you know, every meeting must have a purpose. And if a meeting doesn't begin with somebody stating the purpose of the meeting, then people refuse to participate. That would be a way of doing it, which is different from saying, like, you know, how do you deal with the toxin of blame and the way that blame and a blame culture actually stops people from working effectively. Different things have different strategies, and finding the things and finding the strategies is like part of our work as an organisation. And this is kind of what I'm here to help us all do.
From a non-violent communication point of view, can we catchphrase the term bullshit as being a non-violent means of communicating?
Yeah. I mean, you know,
it's quite a good sort of word that we can latch on to understand. That's what I was thinking, but it does sound aggressive if you sort of
shout out bullshit
Yeah.
in the office.
Shut out the bullshit!
But I do like the term.
Yeah, I think there are the most important thing is the mindset that you have rather than the language that you use. If your intention is not to be like violent or aggressive with people, and you're using bullshit in a way to mean this is a kind of quick, slightly humorous shorthand that I hope is just going to cut and bring us to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And you do that with an intention of respect, you do that caring about the other person, then, you know, people are, you know, maybe will think, well, maybe that was a bit harsh or abrupt, but it's a more effective way of doing stuff than, you know, wasting time trying to find language that doesn't come naturally to you, which will get you into a cycle of frustration, which will mean that actually what you convey to the other person is the frustration with the language that you're using, rather than saying, you know, because this is the thing that you do all the time, you're like, I'm kind of speaking to you from the heart, and this is like just Don unfiltered, and I find that a hell of a lot easier to deal with than, you know, somebody who is, you know, like I talk about empathy, talking to someone in customer service who is saying all the right things, but clearly doesn't give a fuck. I would rather talk to somebody who was maybe a bit harsh or abrupt in the way they were speaking, but clearly gave a fuck about me, you know? That's my advice.
I like that.
So if we assume that our work is awesome, is it awesome because of open culture and the fact that we decided we're going to adopt this and now because of this our work is awesome? Or is it, as you're saying, more the other way around? And if it's the first, is there something else that we can adopt that would make our work more awesome? Or if it's the second, if we ditch open culture and just say we're going to do this whatever way we want and just try and make it awesome, then I guess people have different ideas of awesome, and there may be a clash there.
There is truth in kind of everything that you're saying there, right? So yeah, to some degree, the work that we do is awesome because of the way that we do it, and it's also true that basically what open culture is saying how can we structure our work in a way that makes it awesome. The actual work, I mean, this is why I think Morningstar is such a great example. You know, like they process tomatoes. It's not glamorous, sexy work. You know, people don't think, oh my God, that's going to be like a really awesome job. Processing tomatoes. But the way that they do it, the way that they're like, do you know what, actually this is quite skilled work, right? This is a, you know, very heavily regulated industry. It's food standards. We ship products around the world. You know, there's a very high standard that has to be maintained across the line. And like we have manufacturing machines. So the way that stuff goes from one process to another, there's often a very low level of tolerance. It's actually quite skilled work. If you give people the autonomy to do it, people who enjoy, like skilled manual labor of like operating complex machinery, there's an opportunity for the work to be awesome. So, if you're not doing something that there's any kind of engagement for you fundamentally in what your like knowledge work, you're not interested in producing tax credit claims or consulting for grants clients or like trying to create an interesting like community of of companies in East London, you're in the wrong place, because that's what we do, right? That's the work that we have on hand. The question is, how can we, given that's the work that we have on hand, and we assume that we have some kind of connection and enjoyment in it because we're here, how can we get the most out of it? How can we do it in the most awesome way?
I think, Mike, your question is quite appropriate, but I think the idea is that we filter people out so they have the alignment with what we're trying to achieve, which is what Andrew's spoken about in the past, isn't it? It's having that individual alignment with what we're trying to achieve. So if we've done our job and filtered that out, people's definition of awesome should be rudimentally within the realm of what we're trying to achieve.
And and it is also true that different people will want to do things in different ways. But actually, starting to negotiate some of that difference. If you're on a team, and some people are like, we were talking about this last week. Some people really enjoy agendaless, unfocused meetings because that's a good creative space for them, right? And some people don't. Okay, well, if you have two people who are going to collaborate and they both have different needs, what are you going to do? Well, start with having a discussion about it.
There's an interesting angle related to what you were saying there, which is, so if you watch that talk, that RSA talk about Drive, it's called Drive, I think, where it's about motivation, basically. And one way to define awesome work is work that's really motivating for you, right? Like, if you wake up in the morning, if you say, like, I really want this work, I really want to do this work, this is awesome work. And in Drive, they define that the key components for motivation are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And the autonomy and mastery is what we get from the open culture, because it's supposed to give you that autonomy. Well, no, the autonomy is what you get from the open culture. Mastery is inherent to the fact that you're learning stuff, you're getting better, and some people want to be learning while they're working. And then purpose, we have a purpose as a business, we fulfill a purpose in the market. That's why we get paid, and that purpose is to help startups to get more money, to do more cool innovations. That's maybe something that's motivating, or maybe something that's not motivating. That's not something we as a business can turn around for each person to make it motivating for everybody. Each person has to find that whether there is something that they get excited about that. And if you've got those three components, then the work is inherently awesome. But it comes from all three of those, not just the thing that you do.
The aim of us as a business is to get out of the way of people being able to find autonomy, mastery, and purpose in the work. That's what and it's not that we get autonomy and mastery through open culture. It's that by setting up the stuff that allows us to achieve autonomy and mastery in the work, we have awesome work, and it's the having awesome work that gives us the culture that we want. Culture is not something that we apply, it's the thing that comes afterwards. It's the enlightenment that comes as a result of taking the action.
So, from my understanding, early in GrantTree, you guys had to try really hard to make sure we did stick to open culture and not fall back into like hierarchical type structures.
It's an interesting story
So-
for another time.
But if that was the case, and everyone kind of would rather have, at the time, worked in hierarchy, and you forced open culture on them, then I'm playing devil's advocate, obviously. But is that not the opposite of what Andrew's saying in the talk you just gave?
So having been there at the time, there was definitely, one of the things that launched us towards looking at intrinsic motivation and culture things was somebody in a one-to-one who told me that this is the motivation system I designed, which involved checks on a spreadsheet and stuff for strategic tasks, and then a pay raise if you had enough checks. She told me that that was insulting, and it was demeaning, and made her feel like she was only doing it for the carrot rather than for doing the work. So she felt it was very demotivating, and she was totally right. That was a demeaning system, and there was a definite demand from the company. And then there were a lot of tensions that we had at the time, and that worked themselves out over the following years, that were due to things like, for example, we used to have directors and non-directors, and that was like was a tension there, which Jason or other people could confirm. Like, there was a lot of tension around that, and removing those kind of structures that were there, that were normal traditional business structures, did make the work more awesome. I think it did make the work more motivating. It took away stuff that was in the way.
But I think it's still, even though it may seem like we're further along the path, for me it's still a kind of never-ending journey. For me, you can't say that like we've done this thing. It's like there's constantly stuff to, and the moment you stop like taking this feedback and figuring out what's the next thing to fix, it's dead. The so-called open culture is dead for me.
It's almost like there's always bullshit in the way.
Also, I'd say it's a slight. I think forcing it upon people isn't the right word. It's what you're doing is you're reminding people of how it works. So it is more commonly being reminded to people how it works, how you do it, how you go about it. So that is going to be much more frequent early on, where once you become more habitual, get an understanding of the process, there's less need for those reminders.
I mean, this is what. Taking the slide away. Anyway, this is what this presentation is about, right? One way of thinking about everything that we've talked about in GrantTree fundamentals today is about saying, here are some ways in which maybe either right now your work is not awesome, or here are some things that you might do which might make your work more awesome. It's not that hierarchy per se is a bad thing, right? I acknowledged earlier, like hierarchy with a really shit-hot leader is a joy, right? A complete joy. So it's not hierarchy, it's not, not self-organizing, self-managing, which is the thing that we're aiming for. It's stuff that gets in the way of work being awesome. That's the stuff that we're not into,
If you read some of the books on the topic, the transition between hierarchical organisations and then towards bollocks, the feedback's terrible.
It's bullshit.
Keep reading. Yeah, keep talking. Right.
I might have fixed that. Well, try again.
I was going to make a point around the transition between or towards hierarchy and whatever it is that we're doing here is often bumpy, and that's quite often pointed out in the literature. Just referring back to Donald's earlier point, really.
Cool, thank you. Jason, you were definitely going to say something.
I was toying with something.
Go on.
Toy with it out loud.
I was just thinking about kind of like definition of awesome work from a personal point of view. People trying to change their work to do more pleasing work. If that moves away from the company being less profitable in the way that we operate and organise ourselves and our workflow, at what point did you see what I mean? Because other companies have people who just think of the perspective of the business and how to run this thing as profitable as possible, because they're directly, invested in this, in getting dividends back, whatever. But when that's completely removed from us and the way that we operate, I don't know how this would operate in a more competitive environment where margins are maybe tighter and stuff like that. I don't know how that will change in GrantTree going forward. So it's not really a set question, it's just me kind of...
It's a good observation though. I think for me there are kind of two things that I want to... One is, I talk about this, like we've got the triangle of kind of the clients and us, the people, and the work. And you can look at a business from like any vertex of that triangle, but actually the business encompasses all of those things. And the best possible decision-making framework is one in which you balance all of those interests. So sometimes we might introduce something which creates some financial inefficiency, because doing so creates so much more motivation that we believe on sum total it's good for the business. But there is a limit to that, because we might say, actually, do you know what, we've gone too far with this decision, the balance isn't right. So we're always trying to take a kind of balanced view. In terms of competitiveness, I think that working in this way gives us a great deal of competitive advantage. There's a whole old GTF talk called competitive advantage. Because the point for me is, look, at the very least, if we can be, let's say, 20% more comfortable with change than our competitors in a fast-moving marketplace, we've already had this excellent talk from Rachel about the way that the grant landscape is changing. If we're more able to respond quickly and change quickly because we're less afraid of change as an organisation, because we have all of these practices in place, then we can outperform our competitors because we can respond faster than they can. And that is, to me, evolutionary advantage. That is the stuff that fits us to survive in the marketplace in the long term.
And Jay, also I think that the fact that we're opening up shelves, I really hope that that will encourage more commitment to the business already there, or commercial thinking in terms of how do we make it a more profitable environment so we can do more great things, because we are all kind of invested into this. So I think that, I hope that will help. Because there is a balance there, like having an awesome time, but like making more money so we can do more awesome stuff, not just for ourselves but for other people. It is a balance somewhere there, yeah.
We have kind of 5 minutes left, so is there anybody who hasn't spoken who has something that they want to say? Questions or comments?
Just got one quick question. Yeah, Dan, you mentioned about the mastery, autonomy, and purpose.
Yeah.
Which is really
That was it's always nice when, you know, one of like the family catchphrases comes.
I'm sensing a little hesitation. Shall I take this offline?
No, I think go and storm right into it, mate.
So the purpose from that that trifecta, how does it differ from evolutionary purpose in reinventing organisations? Is it something where you need to kind of look at those differences, or can you kind of have a bit of overlap there that you work with?
Can you have a bit of what, sorry?
How does it basically differ from evolutionary purpose in reinventing organisations? Is it something we need to consider, or how do you look at it?
I'm not sure I fully understand the whole evolutionary purpose chapter in reinventing organizations. I'm not entirely sure Frederick Laloux fully understands it himself. He talks a lot about it, but what I want to say after what Jason said is that ultimately an organization like GrantTree is there to go and help our individual senses of purpose to match with some kind of collective purpose of society. Like purpose are needs, basically. You have
Maybe
a need
any organization.
you have a need to do something in the world. You want to have some kind of positive impact, but like you can't necessarily structure that need in a way that's most efficient to actually serve collective needs. And the way that society recognizes that we're serving some kind of collective need of society is that we make money. And if we lose that connection, what we're doing is we're kind of just getting stuck into just expressing ourselves, expressing our sense of purpose, but in a way that's not actually needed by society. So as a group, if we want to be able to continue expressing ourselves within this business, then we need to continue to also think about how it connects with societal needs. And that's where the sort of connection happens. And you're absolutely right that if we completely lose that connection and say, well, we're just going to do what we like, and not really think about how it results in sort of money or fulfilling some kind of social purpose, eventually it will fall off the tracks.
But also, don't you think that it becomes so much less, like at least for me, so much less satisfying if you don't have that feedback from the society, from the market saying, yeah, we want this, here's the money. If we start doing stuff that's like, it's supposed to be fun, but like it doesn't resonate in terms of feedback and money, like for me, that isn't fun for me anymore, because I'm not doing something that's genuinely useful. So kind of that's my mindset as a commercially driven person.
I tend to agree with that, Carl. I mean, what I'm kind of thinking of is we can look at our societal need, and that's really important, especially from a business point of view. But if it's just looking at societal need and not actually what we want, because if they're not aligned and it's misaligned there, we're not really following the purpose. We're doing the purpose just for a business advantage as opposed to what we actually want to do. That was the only thing I wanted to flag on that, just as, always striving for what we actually want to do and what other people need, but they don't align. We really need to ask that question: what are we doing?
There's an interesting dialogue to have. There's some interesting theory, and I think there's also some very interesting practice here. Like our needs, society's needs, Justin, I really recommend that you read the Visa book, One from Many, the D. Hock book. It's on the Dropbox. And the way that he talks about organisational DNA, I think, is a much more kind of down-to-earth and practical way of understanding evolutionary purpose. Like, every organisation needs a problem statement. That statement tells it go out and solve this, go out and evolve to solve this, you know? Anyway, I want to wrap up there because you've had 2 talks and you've been sitting down for an hour and you've got shit